You've probably heard some people talking about how humans have killed off most of the world's trees. Is that true? If it is, then we could be in serious trouble because trees play an essential role in the survival of life as we know it. In this episode of SCI Show, we're going to talk about whether or not all the world's trees are gone. You might think that a question like this would be simple to answer. There are lots of trees around, right? But the answer isn't as clear-cut as you might think. In 2015, researchers estimated that there are over 3 trillion mature trees on Earth. That's 3 trillion trees just on Earth. In comparison, there are only around 8 billion people. So there are at least 375 trees for every human alive today. That seems like a lot. And we can see how the number of trees on Earth has remained relatively stable over time. Between 1990 and 2010, humans planted approximately 200 billion trees, which is great. But during that same time period, humans also caused 100 billion trees to be lost due to things like wildfires and tree diseases. So even though the exact number fluctuates, overall, the balance between the number of trees being planted and the number of trees being chopped down more or less stays pretty close to zero. So given that humans don't seem to be killing off the world's trees, why are so many people worried about the loss of all the world's trees? Well, it's because scientists say that although the total number of trees may stay the same, the types of trees we have are changing. According to a study published in August 2022, humans are replacing old-growth forests with young ones. Old-growth forests have big, mature trees that have lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. For example, California's Hyperion, the tallest tree in the world, is over 380 feet tall and thought to be between 600 and 800 years old. Young growth forests, on the other hand, have small trees that are only decades old. According to the study, since the beginning of human civilization, we've replaced roughly half of the world's old growth forests with young ones. And here's why that's a problem. Old growth forests are better at capturing carbon from the atmosphere than young forests. That's because when a tree grows older, it grows bigger. And big trees capture more carbon than small trees do. Also, old-growth forests have deep root systems that help them capture even more carbon. The roots of these ancient trees form a vast network that spreads out beneath the forest floor, helping them pull carbon out of the air and store it away in their tissues. Big trees can capture up to 100 times more carbon than small trees. And old-growth forests can store 4 times more carbon than young forests. This means that on average, one mature tree can capture about 400 kilograms of carbon over its lifetime. That's the equivalent of taking almost 10 cars off the road each year. But what happens if we chop down those big trees? When trees are chopped down or burned, they release the carbon they've been storing back into the atmosphere, which contributes to global warming. A single mature tree can release anywhere from 250 to 600 kilograms of carbon. That's as much carbon as the average person emits in 6 to 14 years. So if we lose old-growth forests, we'll lose the ability to store vast amounts of carbon, and it turns out that we already have. According to the study, forests managed by humans have become 17% worse at storing carbon over the past few decades. What's worse, if we keep cutting down old-growth forests and replacing them with young ones, scientists predict that forests will become even worse at storing carbon. They estimate that by the end of the century, human activity will reduce the total amount of carbon stored in forests by between 20 and 50%. So it's possible that in the future, forests won't be able to suck enough carbon out of the sky to offset all the carbon emissions produced by humans. And we're already seeing evidence of this happening. Even though the Amazon rainforest is often called the lungs of the Earth because it absorbs so much carbon, a recent study suggests that it may be nearing a tipping point. Currently, the Amazon rainforest stores about 150 billion tons of carbon. But researchers found that instead of gaining carbon, the Amazon has been releasing more carbon than it's captured since 2010. Between 2010 and 2020, the Amazon released 17% more carbon than it captured. Now, you might be thinking, well, it's just a rainforest in South America. What difference does it make if it releases more carbon than it captures? Well, it makes a huge difference. The Amazon is home to 1/4 of all the species on Earth. It provides food and resources for millions of people and helps regulate the climate of the entire planet. If the Amazon were to stop working the way it currently does, the consequences would be dire. In the past, scientists have said that if the Amazon were to die, humans would have only a couple of years left before the whole planet became uninhabitable. While that prediction might be a bit of an exaggeration, no one would blame you for thinking otherwise. Global warming is already causing widespread crop failure, rising sea levels, more intense storms, and longer heat waves. And it's projected to get worse over the next few decades. This is why it's so important that we understand how our actions affect the delicate balance of life on Earth. Although it doesn't feel like it sometimes, we humans are part of an ecosystem. And when we take something out of an ecosystem, whether it's carbon or trees or anything else, we need to understand how that affects the rest of the system. After all, it's only a matter of time before the consequences catch up to us. If we want to live on this planet in the future, we need to take care of it now. I know this sounds depressing, but the good news is that we have a choice in the matter. We can choose to change our behaviors, and we can choose to support policies that protect the environment. For example, one group of researchers has proposed a global plan to bring back old-growth forests by 2030. Their plan includes planting 1 trillion new trees and protecting existing forests. Other groups are developing new technologies that can suck carbon out of the air and store it away, like in rocks. But it's not too late to make a difference. We've already seen how quickly forests can recover when humans give them a chance. In 1972, the U.S. Forest Service began reintroducing wolves to Yellowstone National Park. Wolves had been hunted to extinction in the area decades earlier, but the Forest Service brought them back because they knew that wolves played an essential role in the ecosystem. Wolves prey on elk and other large animals, which keeps their populations under control. Elk, on the other hand, like to eat young trees, so by introducing wolves, the Forest Service was essentially creating a natural solution to the problem of too many elk and not enough trees. Today, the wolf population in Yellowstone is doing well, and the forest is thriving. These examples show that it's not too late to turn things around. We've done a lot of damage to the environment, but we can still fix it. All it takes is a little bit of planning and a lot of hard work. So the next time you hear someone say we've killed off all the world's trees, you can tell them it's not quite true. But we're getting close. And if we don't change our behavior, we could end up destroying the only home we've ever known. Speaking of destroying our home, last month, NASA's DART spacecraft intentionally crashed into a planet.